Chapter 20, Lost in the Dirac Sea. Chichijima, Ogasawara Archipelago. Godzilla lazily drifted through the water, enjoying the feel of the waves lapping against him. Peace and quiet was a luxury for him, a luxury he used to the fullest. Normally he would spend it alone, but this time he had company in the form of his son. Junior swam alongside him, making sure to avoid the broad swings of his father's tail. When Godzilla returned home and reconnected his link with Junior, he looked through his son's eyes as he fought a green gargantua in the city. An immense swell of pride rose in his chest at the thought of it. It was tinged, however, with a small amount of worry. His son was a gentle creature at heart. Could he endure the eons of combat that he did? He brushed the thought out of his mind, instead focusing on enjoying his swim. No later than 5 minutes had passed, however, when he felt an all-too-familiar tingling sensation in the back of his head. With a growl he began to speed up, telling Junior to stay put. Rodin sped overhead, a contrail trailing behind him as he broke the sound barrier. Anguirus remained on the island, deciding to instead guard Mothra's egg. Godzilla sliced through the waves at a furious pace, his radioactive blood pounding through his veins as he steeled himself for battle. Once more it was time to protect the balance of nature and destroy whatever threatened it. Misato's apartment. Shinji woke with a start when Asuka barged in, his door smashing into the wall in the process. He sprung upright, his heart pounding from shock. "There's an angel coming," the red-haired pilot said tersely, her face devoid of any sign of emotion. With that, she left as quickly as she had arrived, leaving a rather baffled Shinji. Is it me, or is there something wrong with her? Shinji thought to himself as he raced after Asuka, not even bothering to throw on some shoes. That might have been my fault, Zone Fighter replied guiltily. Wait, what? Shinji asked, growing puzzled. I accidentally revealed that you have a crush on her, Zone Fighter said sorrowfully. You what? Shinji exclaimed, his eyes widening. Why did you do that? She was trying to interrogate you while there was still Soma in your system, and I decided to step in. I guess the Soma affected me a little as well. Great, Shinji groaned aloud, now she knows. It's no wonder why she's been acting so weird. He was outside now, his bare feet padding against the cold asphalt. Misato's car was nowhere to be seen, she had already taken off with Asuka in tow. Shinji straightened, about to do the little transformation ritual, then paused. You know what? Screw him, he thought angrily. With a flash he transformed, not bothering the little hand gestures as he rocketed into the sky. Nerve HQ. What's the status of the Angel? Misato barked in a commanding tone. It's currently 900 meters away from the center of the city, Aoba replied. Putting on screen now. The Angel came into view. It was definitely the strangest looking one yet, Misato decided. It was a perfect sphere with a bizarre black and white color scheme that reminded her of dazzle camouflage used by Navy vessels in World War I. Misato couldn't help but feel slightly uneasy as it slowly drifted towards the city. Have the Maser tanks engaged the target yet? Gordon asked from Misato's side. Yes, Anat replied. Maser Battalion intercepted the Angel near Lake Hashi. The attacks were completely unsuccessful. Unsuccessful how? Gordon inquired. The details are important here. If the reports coming in are accurate, the beams just passed through, Anat replied. That's weird, Misato muttered before turning back to the technicians. Launch all units, but don't have them intercepted just yet. Yes, ma'am. Hyuga replied. Tokyo Harbor. Godzilla rose out of the harbor, shaking off thousands of tons of seawater as he stepped onto land. Rodin had already reached the city, the giant pterosaur could be seen lazily circling about a point hidden by the hills. Godzilla began to trudge forward, eventually managing to break out into a slow run. Speed was never the nuclear Leviathan's forte, he was the slowest of all of the rulers of Earth. Soon he managed to clear the hill, giving him a good look at the enemy. It was certainly one of the weirder creatures he had seen, which was really saying something. He gave it no more thought, however, and once more he began to advance. He briefly considered blasting it from afar with his atomic ray, but realized that he could accidentally hit something else from this distance. As he continued to trudge down the hill, another thought began to nag him: why hadn't the humans attacked it yet? Tokyo 3. Shinji landed lightly on the street, facing the angel. It made no sign of acknowledging his presence, it simply continued to slowly drift forward. Shinji eyed it warily. Experience told him that there was often more than met the eye when it came to angels. Out of the corner of his eye he could see Rodin circling overhead, occasionally flapping his titanic wings in order to maintain its altitude. "Shinji, this is Miki," came the psychic's mental voice. "Do not engage the angel just yet, apparently Maser attacks just passed right through it. We need to find out what's going on first." "What do you mean, passed right through?" Shinji inquired. He got his answer before Miki could respond when Rodin lunged at the angel, apparently deciding now to attack. The giant pterosaur screeched and sped forward, preparing to smash into the angel like a colossal bullet. Only to simply pass through the angel completely. Rodin had to careen upwards to avoid hitting a building, and cackled angrily as he began once more to circle the bizarre sphere. As for the angel, it showed no sign of the attack even happening. Shinji had to do a double take at the sight of it. "How did that even happen?" Shinji asked, still in shock. "We still don't know, Shinji," Miki replied. "That's Rodin's third time hitting it. The others are advancing on your position, stay put." "Got it," Shinji replied. He continued to observe the angel, trying to figure out just how it could have done that. His eyes wandered downwards, towards the shadow the creature cast on the ground. As the shadow fell on a nearby car, it suddenly disappeared into the ground. Shinji's eyes widened. "What the?" he began, only to be silenced when a maser beam passed through the angel's body, almost striking him in the head. Looking up, he saw Asuka rushing towards the angel in Unit 02, a maser rifle in her hands. "Don't worry about this one, I'll handle it." Asuka growled through the Eva's external speakers, the air beginning to warp in front of her. "That field is at maximum extent." "Wait!" Shinji called out, but by then it was too late. Asuka stepped onto the angel's shadow and immediately began to sink. In a matter of seconds she was up to her knees in the shadow. Shinji watched in horror, paralyzed by the sight before him. "What the hell is going on?" Asuka exclaimed, frantically trying to escape. "I can't get out." She was up to her waist in the shadow now, the maser rifle had disappeared completely into the inky darkness. "Help me, Shinji!" she screamed. That finally spurred him into action. Shinji flew forward, taking Asuka's hands into his own. He pulled frantically, trying to drag Asuka out of whatever inky blackness the angel was bringing her into. To his growing horror, he realized that they were still sinking. Asuka was now up to her neck in the shadow, looking up at Shinji with Unit 02's eyes. A great roar sounded out behind him, and muscular hands took hold of his ankles. Straining his neck, Shinji found that Godzilla was now joining the tug-of-war. Even that wasn't enough, sadly, and the king of the monsters found himself being dragged towards the shadow along with the others. Asuka's head disappeared, along with Shinji's hands. They felt cold, immeasurably so, reminding him of his brush with death on Mars. Nonetheless, he refused to let go. Godzilla's feet finally slipped, and together all three disappeared into the angel's shadow. Nerve HQ. Misato stared at the view screen, her mouth hanging open slightly. Asuka, Shinji, and Godzilla were gone. Rei and Toji were too late, and were now standing at a safe distance from the angel. Rodin had landed near them, and Misato could have sworn that there was a forlorn look on the creature's face. Misato turned her head towards Ritsuko. "Ritz, please tell me you have an idea what's going on," she asked with a pleading tone in her voice. Ritsuko didn't respond at first, still trying to come up with a proper answer. Her hair was more frayed than usual, and with a suppressed chuckle Misato remembered that they still hadn't found Maya yet. It's possible that they have been pulled into a Dirac sea, the blonde scientist finally managed to say. The Dirac sea theory has been mired in controversy from day one, Gordon said. It probably doesn't even exist. Maybe in your universe, Ritsuko retorted. Here, it has been validated in a series of experiments. That's how we were able to develop the positron cannon. What's a Dirac sea? Misato interjected. It's a pocket dimension, a state of space composed entirely of negative energy, Ritsuko replied. Positive particles are holes in the space. It's likely that the angel managed to create a Dirac sea by inverting its field. So that's how it managed to trap them in its shadow? Misato asked. If my theory is true, then that shadow is actually the angel's body, Ritsuko replied. The sphere is actually a projection of its shadow into our state of space. Misato briefly tried to grasp the concept, then gave up, figuring that there were more important matters at hand. What can we do about it? She said finally. That's for me to work on, Ritsuko said, heading towards the lab. I'll have to do some calculations, pull up some old papers on the Dirac sea. Misato sighed, turning back to the view screen. I wonder what could be going on in there? She said softly. Lele eel. Shinji found himself on a train. At least, it appeared to be a train. The edges of it were blurry and undefined, almost as though he were in a dream. Golden sunlight poured in through a window, casting long shadows in the train. Looking down, he noticed that he was back in his normal clothes. Zone Fighter, are you there? He asked softly. There was no response. Shinji looked around the train compartment once more, and realized that he wasn't alone. A young boy sat across from him, the finer features of his face hidden by shadows. Who are you? Shinji asked. I am the Shinji Ikari that exists in the mind of Shinji Ikari, the boy replied. There are many Shinji Ikaris in this world. There is the one in the mind of Misato Katsuragi, the one in the mind of Asuka Langley Soryu, the one in the mind in Rei Ayanami, and so on. The boy studied Shinji before speaking again. You are Lilim, yet you are not Lilim. The true Lilim is the one that shall face itself. With that, the boy disappeared. Shinji sprang to his feet. Wherever he was, he wanted out. When he reached the door, however, he found that it would not open, no matter how hard he tried. Your self-deception and refusal of others traps you, the boy's voice echoed through the compartment. Let me out! Shinji cried, smashing his fists into the door. He continued to pound on the door until his knuckles began to bleed, and then some more. Finally he backed away from the door and slumped against the door, sobbing. Let me out, he said weakly. There was a brief stillness in everything, almost as if time itself had crawled to a halt, and then light began to flood the compartment, a brilliant white that forced Shinji to look away. Shinji? A voice said softly. The light began to dim, allowing Shinji to see who it was. A glowing figure stood before him, devoid of any features. Zone Fighter? Shinji asked, rising to his feet. Where were you? I was in some strange void, the alien responded. I decided to look for you, and now I'm here. What about the others? Shinji inquired. Where's Asuka? I don't know, Zone Fighter replied. He kneeled on the ground, putting himself at eye level with Shinji. Let's go look for them, he said softly. I can't, Shinji said softly. Zone Fighter looked around the train compartment, understanding the meaning behind the words. We can, Shinji, he said, extending his hand. Together. Shinji considered the hand before him, a moment that seemed to stretch for an eternity as pondered the courses laid before him. Then, with more than a little trepidation, he took it. There was another flash of light, and he was in his armor again. Let's go find the others, shall we? Zone Fighter asked. Shinji grabbed the handle of the door, took a deep breath, and opened it. Asuka found herself in a hospital. She knew it was a hospital. The sterile white halls were saturated with the smell of cleaning chemicals and disinfectants. A nearby window showed a cloudless blue sky. Of course, the real reason why she knew that it was a hospital was the fact that it was etched into her memory. "Where am I?" she exclaimed, wildly looking about. Her eyes fell upon a small girl with brilliant red hair. A headless teddy bear was clutched in her hands, and her eyes were fringed with tears. "Who are you?" "I am the Asuka Langley Soryu that lives in the mind of Asuka Langley Soryu," the little girl replied. "What the hell are you talking about?" Asuka hissed, rising to her full height. "You put up a facade," the girl continued, seemingly oblivious. "You lie to others and yourself, reacting with anger to prevent others from finding the true you. You delude yourself constantly, yet deep down you do not believe your own lie, no matter how much you want to. Why?" "Shut up," Asuka growled, advancing on the girl. "You have no idea what you are talking about." "Is it because you'll betray Mama?" the girl asked, a far from innocent look on its face. "Shut up!" Asuka screamed, rushing towards the girl. Before she could reach her, however, the girl transformed into a sight that stopped her dead in her tracks. A corpse hung from a noose, her blue eyes lifeless. Next to her was a worn-out doll, hanging from a noose of its own. The word Asuka was embroidered on its chest. "Mama?" Asuka said, suddenly growing very weak. Tears began to well up in her eyes. The lifeless blue eyes locked with Asuka's own. "Die with me, Asuka," the corpse said. "Please, stop. Don't show me this." The tears were flowing freely now. Asuka turned away, only to find the corpse still facing her. "Go away." "Die with me, Asuka," the corpse repeated. The doll turned its head as well. "Die with me, Asuka," it said. "Die with me, Asuka," they said together. "No!" Asuka screamed, falling down and scrambling away from the nooses, away from the doll. "I won't." No matter what she did, however, could get her away. Suddenly she felt cold hands take hold of her throat, squeezing the life out of her. "Die with me, Asuka," came her mother's pleading voice. "You're an arrogant bitch, you know that?" came Misato's voice. "You shouldn't have been a pilot in the first place, everyone else is doing a far better job than you." "Such a shameful daughter," came her father's. "I knew I should have had a son." "You always treat me like crap," came Shinji's. "I've been nothing but good to you, and you reward it by being a bitch. I should have let you die that day at the airport." "Please," Asuka whimpered. "I don't wanna die, I don't wanna die, I don't wanna die, I don't wanna die." The only answer that came was a tightening of the hands around her throat. "Die with me, Asuka." Just when Asuka felt as though her eyes were going to burst, a brilliant light flooded the darkening halls. Something grabbed at the hands around her throat, prying them away with tremendous strength. Precious air flooded into Asuka's lungs, and she collapsed into a pair of strong arms. "Asuka?" came Shinji's voice. "What's happening?" Asuka shoved away from him, tears pouring from her eyes. "You don't care about me." Her voice was hoarse. "No one cares about me." "What are you talking about?" Shinji asked. "Of course I care about you. Everyone leaves me." Asuka began to sob once more, dropping to her knees. "Mama left me, Papa left me, and you'll leave me," she said weakly. "Asuka," Shinji said gently, kneeling as to be at eye level with her. The armor faded away, revealing piercing blue eyes that locked with hers. "I won't leave you." Do you mean that?" Asuka asked between sobs. "Every word," Shinji said. She could feel it in her very being that he meant it. He extended a hand, and she took it, letting him pull her to her feet. He embraced her, letting her rest his head against his chest. "Every word," he repeated. "Don't believe him," the corpse hissed. Shinji placed himself between Asuka and the corpse, glaring at the thing with unrestrained fury in his eyes. Get away from her. The corpse lunged, only to receive a fist to the face. It stumbled back, and the scenery shifted as it did so. They were in the train again, and the corpse was once more a small boy. The light of your soul should not be as ours, it growled. The bond with the Not Lilim has tainted you. Do I look like I care? Shinji asked. Before the boy could do anything, the train began to rock violently. Ivory teeth the size of men punched through its thin walls, nearly impaling the boy. Shinji took the opportunity to grab Asuka and run through the nearby door. Turning back, they watched as the compartment they were just in was ripped from the tracks, clutched in the maw of none other than Godzilla. The radioactive saurian shook the train car like a rabid dog, eventually spitting it back out. What the Asuka began, only to be interrupted when Godzilla reappeared in their train car, now as tall as a man. He studied them with his burning orange eyes, then snorted with apparent satisfaction. A sound behind him drew his attention, and he whirled about, growling. The boy had returned, and was now glaring at the group with hateful eyes. Suddenly, they widened. You have sprouted from neither seed, it said with astonishment. You have no light for me to reflect, yet you still think. What are you? Godzilla opted to answer by blasting the boy in the face with his atomic breath. The boy simply disappeared before the onslaught and reappeared when the attack ceased. There is nothing either of us can truly do to the other, it said. A smirk appeared on its face. There is no need, escape is impossible here. You will all die, eventually. We'll see about that, Shinji growled, cracking his knuckles. Nerve HQ. Misato continued to stare at the strange sphere hanging over the city with a grim look in her eyes. Unit 00 and Unit 01 were standing at the edge of the Angel, their it fields at maximum extent. Already countless aircraft were becoming visible over the horizon, carrying the remaining N2 mines in Nerve's arsenal. The plan, if she could even call it that, was to drop all of the mines into the Angel, hopefully producing a detonation that would destroy the Angel. She objected to the plan, stating that the detonations would likely destroy everyone trapped inside, but she was overridden by the higher-ups. All she could do now was pray, and hope that a miracle would happen before it was too late. T-5 minutes until the second stage of the operation begins, Alba stated. Bombers are readying their payloads. Suddenly alarms began to flash on the consoles. At field detected. Hyuga exclaimed. It's coming from within the Angel. That's impossible. Ritsuko retorted. Unit 02's operational batteries ran dry 2 hours ago. Almost as if to respond to her statement, the Angel's spherical shadow turned pitch black. The shadow body beneath it began to ripple, forming inky waves that grew in frequency. Before anyone could figure out what was going on, a hand burst out of the Angel's shadow, spraying blood everywhere. What's happening? Misato asked. For once, Ritsuko had no answer. A second hand burst through the tear created by the first one and began to widen it. Blood continued to spray from the Angel's shadow, and it showed no sign of stopping as a head emerged, its yellow eyes glowing fiercely. The figure roared, an inhuman bellow of rage that shattered nearby windows from its sheer intensity. With a gasp, Misato realized that it was Shinji. Shinji continued to widen the tear he had made in the Angel, almost halfway out now. A second pair of hands joined him, and Godzilla's roar rolled across the city. With a sickening ripping sound, the Angel's shadow was completely torn open, covering the streets in a shower of blood. Godzilla, Shinji, and Olymp Unit 02 fell, shattering the Angel's true body when they landed. Holy crap, Gordon muttered. I knew the kid had something in him. For a few moments, Misato simply stared in shock at the sight before her, then her professional side took over. We need recovery teams there, ASAP. A few hours later. Ritsuko trudged up the stairs of her apartment, feeling completely exhausted by the events of the day. All she wanted to do now was get some sleep. She didn't even care that Maya was still prowling about. Besides, she told herself, the serum should have worn off by now. Maya probably won't be bothering me anymore. I can't lie that I haven't been slightly curious, but that's it. When she opened the door to her apartment, however, she was treated to an unexpected sight. The bedroom, living room was lit by the dim light of scented candles, and a trail of rose petals on the floor led to the bed. What caught Ritsuko's attention the most, however, was the fact that Maya was on the bed, dressed only in lacy black lingerie. "Hello, senpai," Maya purred. "You know what? Fuck it," Ritsuko thought to herself as she began to discard her lab coat. This is 100 times more romantic than anything Gendo did. Nerve. It had been several hours since Asuka had been admitted to the infirmary. Shinji remained in the hall the whole time, refusing to leave when Misato offered to drive him home. He rocked back and forth on the waiting bench, clenching an armrest hard enough to leave imprints in the metal. "Oh God, I hope she's okay," he thought to himself. For the 213th time, the doctors said she's fine, Zone Fighter replied. "You need to rest after what just happened, Shinji." "I will when she gets out," Shinji retorted. The conversation came to an abrupt halt when the door finally slid open. Asuka walked out, a bit haggard-looking but otherwise unharmed. Shinji bolted upright, feeling a bit uneasy. He expected that they might have to discuss what happened while they were in the Angel. What he didn't expect, however, was the bone-crushing hug. When he opened his mouth to say something, she preemptively silenced him with a smothering kiss. Finally, Zone Fighter commented. "Took the two of you long enough, eh?" To his surprise, the boy didn't reply. "Shinji?" "Earth to Shinji, are you there?" Zone Fighter continued. The boy still didn't respond. There was something far more preoccupying on his mind at the moment.